Senator, give me your take. It's been 6 months since the governor's address. If you start looking through the things she promised that night, she checked a lot of the boxes, and yet I'm not sure you would give her an A.
And so the challenge is, I think, as you look at it, the governor's failed to provide immediate relief for inflation. We could have gotten a good deal earlier this year in providing tax relief for all working families here in Michigan, tax relief for all seniors here in the state of Michigan. And the governor and the legislative Democrats decided to go the other way and decided to fight against providing tax relief for all working families and also make sure that they didn't get immediate relief. The senior relief they're looking at implementing over the next 4 years instead of immediate full relief. And instead, they wanted to go ahead and do paybacks to their big union bosses. And they also wanted to continue to push for big incentives, big corporate welfare for some of the most profitable multinational corporations. And so they demonstrated to the country that they were not serious about economic development by forcing Michigan workers to join a union against their will by repealing our right to work laws. They used taxes paid by Michigan small businesses to allow cash incentives to some of the most profitable multinational corporations, in fact, some with ties with the Chinese Communist Party. And they spent a record $9 billion surplus without making significant new investments in roads and infrastructures or paying down long-term debt.
It's interesting. There's an interesting difference, I guess, between getting things done and, I guess, to your mind, getting the wrong things done.
Well, this is all about, I think, with Governor Whitmer and the legislative Democrats, it's all about them paying back their big union bosses, big multinational corporations, and big trial lawyers. And this is not, they're not on the side of families providing choice to parents. They're not on the side of small businesses or the working families to expand the middle class. And unfortunately, Governor Whitmer and the Democrats are taking their marching orders from the union bosses, crafting special carve-outs in state law to benefit their biggest campaign supporters. And they charge taxpayers more than market rate for building roads and school construction projects. In fact, 20% more. So instead of paving 10 miles of roads, they're only going to be able to pave 8 miles of roads because they're paying back their big union donors.
She just yesterday, of course, signed the education budget, the highest per pupil spending that we've ever seen in the state in Michigan. Also, she did manage to get the free pre-K for every Michigan child and ended up throwing in lunches and breakfast for those who need them as well. Give me your take on the education budget part, set aside from the rest of the budget issues.
Well, remember earlier this year, the Governor Whitmer continues to take away accountability measures on our public schools. She repealed our third grade grading law that says that by third grade, students should be able to read. And if they aren't able to read, that they should have an individual learning plan. And they repealed that earlier this year. And they also, Whitmer and the Democrats, have removed educational standards from the classroom and eliminated transparency for parents, such as the A through F grading, that every school building in the state of Michigan would get a simple A through F reading grade. And they repealed that accountability measure earlier this year. And so, though I'm going to continue to try to work and find a way to work in a bipartisan manner and to pay down long-term debt and to provide more opportunities and choice for our students, I think what the Democrats and Governor Whitmer have done in the first 6 months by taking away these accountability measures on our schools is the wrong direction for Michigan and not providing the right educational choice for our students. And there's more bills to come. I mean, Democrats have introduced bills that would allow teachers to strike in the middle of the school year so that students couldn't even go to the classroom and show up to learn. And remember, this is the governor that closed down our schools for months and months and months, for nearly a year and a half, where some students couldn't even receive an education at their local school. And so there is a real difference in terms of priorities of how do you empower students and families to get the education that they deserve and they need here in the state, compared to a governor it's all about the next press release and paybacks to the big union bosses.
While we're on the subject of unions, can you just give me a quick thumbnail on your level of concern as we head into these UAW Big Three negotiations?
I mean, this is very troubling. I mean, you've seen these big union bosses, and I'm somebody who I'm always on the side of workers. I'm going to continue to work to make sure that our working, families deserve the benefits and the pay that they deserve. But going into these union negotiations, you got to remember that earlier this year, the new head of the UAW says we need to return to what the unions actually believe in, and that the employers are the enemy. And I think it's a time where we're going forward in an international competition, and especially here in Michigan, where we shouldn't have Detroit versus outstate or union versus management, or we need to work to come together to try to tackle some of the toughest issues that we have here in the state. And that means improving education, giving workers more flexibility and freedom, and allowing investors and employers to invest and grow jobs here in the state of Michigan. And I'm afraid what we've seen over the last 6 months is the antithesis of asking for growth and economic development in this state. And instead, what we've seen is folks trying to give some of the biggest giveaways to radical environmental groups, big union bosses over working families, and some of the most well-paid trial lawyers in the nation, and trying to really limit the growth and the potential that Michigan has. And so Senate Republicans and House Republicans, we're going to continue to fight to provide a more competitive environment here in Michigan, to defend working families, and to make sure that we're investing in what's actually needed long term, investing in better roads, better bridges, water and wastewater, and protecting our environment instead of these big paybacks for some of the most left-wing progressive causes in the nation.
Essentially, on the House side, you could end up getting back to at least being level with these two Democrats that are running for mayoral seats. That would be an interesting. I mean, I realize it's the other side of the building from you, but that'd be an interesting development, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, it would provide a check and balance from some of the most radical left-wing progressive agenda items that they're doing. They're pushing anything possible to pay back big union bosses, trial lawyers, and some of the most profitable multinational corporations in the nation. Who's watching out for the small business owners? Who's watching out for the families and students and protecting working families here in the state of Michigan? That's something that we're going to continue to work on. What happens this fall with I know Representative Stone and Representative Coleman are running there in Westland and Warren, and they both win, and it provides a bit more of a balance in the legislature for 6 or 8 months, and it provides that balance, which I think is important for the state that have seen some of the most radical left-wing agenda items that have been advanced by this Democratic majority. And they only have a majority by 1 vote. 1 vote in the House, 1 vote in the Senate. If they would lose 1 Democrat senator, 1 Democrat House member, they can't pass an issue. And I'm afraid that we saw last year these House and Senate Democrats ran as fake moderates, and they're governing like some of the most extreme left-wing progressives from California and New York. And unfortunately, the folks that are going to pay the price are working families here in Michigan.
This is one of the things, though, that I wanted to point out. You just said it. This is for all the talk that there's been about the first time for 40 years that you've had Democrat majorities in both houses. This is so slim. She can get almost nothing done without a little bit of Republican support. The 3 ideas she put forward during her State of the State address on guns, background checks, safe storage laws, red flag laws, she got them passed, and she got those passed with Republican help, as many of these things involve some Republican help.
Not all those that you talked about included Republican help, especially in the Senate. However, as you look at going forward, last year, so there's 76 members, 56 House Democrats, 20 Senate Democrats, right? 76 Democrats in the legislature. How many had a hunting license last year?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
Only one Democrat had a hunting license last year out of those 76 members. And so this is not your grandfather's Democratic Party. This is an extreme left-wing progressive group of individuals that are ramming through some of the most left-wing agenda items that it may even make Gavin Newsom in California blush for how fast that they're jamming through some of these anti-worker, anti-growth, anti-family, anti-educational choice items. And so if I was the Democrats, and again, there's no room for take advice from me, but if I was the Democrats, I would look at trying to provide a more moderating stance instead of allowing these progressive Democrats that want us to look more like Venezuela than the United States of America, to tell them to take a hold and start negotiating with Republicans.
There's the number, but is there any one of those three of the what a lot of people referred to as, at the time when they were being up for vote, common sense gun measures? Were there any of those that you don't think are common sense, or that you really think is a step backwards?
Well, they refuse to negotiate. I think some of these you'll see struck down constitutionally in the federal courts. If they found a middle way on some of these measures, such as having the red flag laws that were closer to what Indiana has, that actually gives folks due process, kind of a basic constitutional right that actually provides individuals with some protection, that actually works through on what safe storage laws actually mean, instead of a radical left-wing agenda from folks that have never went hunting, never owned a gun before, then there would have been some more Republican votes that would have came forward. But instead, they jammed through a partisan left-wing agenda items through the legislature. And it was just unfortunate they refused to sit down. I know some senators, some Republican senators work to try to sit down and find a moderating stance to pass some bipartisan, measures, but the Democrats wanted no use. They just wished and hoped that Republicans would come over and vote for some of these bills instead of actually truly negotiating. And it actually takes hard work to negotiate, to find bipartisan compromise. And so the question is that do they want to continue to jam through left-wing, radical, progressive agenda items by one vote margins, or are they going to actually try to negotiate and bring in 2/3 of the Democrats and half the Republicans to find a middle spot going forward?
Two more quick questions. First off, can you think of an area where you think Governor Whitmer deserves any credit for what she's done?
Well, I think she deserves credit for chasing jobs and people out of the state of Michigan. You've seen over the last 3 years, since her COVID shutdowns 3.5 years ago, that Governor Whitmer's COVID policies have pushed people out of the state to states like Indiana or the free state of Florida. And we're one of the shrinking states like Illinois, California, New York, that continue to lose population to other states. And I think Governor Whitmer deserves a lot of that credit for shrinking the size and the population of our state. If there's ways to look at things going over, is that it was a unilateral one-person rule during those COVID shutdowns. If she really wanted to work with the legislature, and even the Supreme Court back in 2020 ruled what she was doing was unconstitutional. You look at the high growth states. What are those supercharged states that are growing population, economic development, and working families? Texas, Tennessee, Florida, all have no income tax, and yet Governor Whitmer next year is working her tail off to make sure that Michigan sees working families see a Whitmer income tax increase next year.
I asked for any area where you could give her credit. I think you just gave her blame. I realize this is anathema to politics and the way you talk about your political opponent.
It's not anathema.
Is there nothing you can think of that she's done well?
Well, I think 4 years ago, she came up together and found a consensus on passing auto insurance reform on no fault 4 years ago in 2019. Unfortunately, she was forced into that because Dan Gilbert said he was going to go ahead and do a ballot initiative if she wouldn't compromise and find a landing spot. And so we didn't go as far as I wanted to, didn't provide as much choice and cost savings as it should have, but it was a step in the right direction from a one-size-fit-all policy that was in place for nearly 50 years. And so I give her credit for signing Senate Bill 1 back in 2019 that provided some cost savings for working families. There's a lot more work to do to lower auto insurance costs here in the state, though.
Lastly, Senator, I don't know how to describe the state of the Michigan Republican Party leadership as anything but in a state of chaos at the moment. Give me your take on what's happening in the state party and what impact you think that's having on Republicans now trying to move forward statewide in a big election year ahead in 2024.
Well, you're going to see Republican leader Matt Hall and myself take the lead in winning back the legislature over the next 2 cycles, getting Republicans based on issues that matter to working families. And so you're going to see us pushing education choice. You're going to see us pushing against these trial lawyers that are going to raise the cost of living for working families here in the state of Michigan, providing workers opportunities instead of paybacks to union bosses. And we're going to concentrate on investing in our infrastructure, roads and bridges and water and wastewater infrastructure. You know, things can happen in different organizations or associations, but I'm going to remain focused and work with my caucus members to advance those measures in the state Senate and work with Republican leader Matt Hall and win back the state house next year. And that's going to be the best medicine to provide a check and balance from the radical left-wing progressive agenda that Governor Whitmer and the Democrats in the legislature are pushing.
Are you worried about the radicals in your own party?
Well, I'm more worried about the left-wing radicals that are trying to reshape America more into Venezuela than things that are based upon the Constitution and providing opportunities for workers and entrepreneurs and providing choice for families and their students and their kids' education.
Senator Nesbitt, I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for this.